Alright, in this video we are going to be talking about the different categories of political integration, or levels of political integration. And what that mostly has to do with is the degree of organizational complexity or structural complexity of a human population. So there are basically three main categories of political integration. There are acephalous societies, which are characteristically leaderless, lacking any form of formal government. There are chieftainships, which are what most people are referring to when they talk about tribal societies. So basically societies that have like chiefs and elders and things like that. But they're still not what we would call full-blown civilizations or state-level societies. State-level societies. And a state-level society is basically a full-blown, like, modern-day state with, well, it doesn't have to be a modern-day state. It could include ancient states like the Greeks and the Romans and the Egyptians as well. But they have full-blown civilization. So monuments and formal government and libraries of law books and all the trimmings. So full-blown state-level civilizations are the at the highest level of political integration. And it's important to remember that these are not necessarily different stages that societies pass through. In fact, a lot of acephalous societies, it turns out, have come from state-level societies, although in the past there was a social theory known as evolutionism, which was the idea that human societies progress through predictable stages of development. So the idea that societies will progress from acephalous societies to chieftainships to state-level societies, that was called evolutionism, and it's a largely debunked social development theory. And if you'll notice, it bears absolutely no resemblance to what we now know of biological evolution. It got its name back when orthogenesis, and you might want to look this up, although it's kind of off on a tangent, in the days when orthogenesis was taken seriously as a theory of evolution. And orthogenesis was the idea that there was some inherent quality of living things that that drove them to become more complex. And so, back in the olden days, some people used to think that's how evolution worked, that there was just something inherent in living things that would drive them to become more complex. And so that's probably where we got the term or around the time we got the term evolutionism for this particular social theory, because this particular social theory that societies develop through stages like this, it doesn't really sound like modern day theories of biological evolution. It sounds a lot like orthogenesis, um, or an idea parallel to it. In any event, orthogenesis is no longer taken seriously in the field of biological evolution, and evolutionism is no longer taken seriously as a theory of social development. So I just wanted to touch upon that and make sure that you know these are not stages that you should expect a society to progress through. Societies go back and forth and change all the time. This is not like a predictable path of development. They're just ranked according to how structurally complex their societies are. That's it. So with acephalous societies, we can further break those down into band level societies and big man societies. And in band level societies, those are truly leaderless. In band level societies, people vote with their feet. So if you don't like what your group is doing, you don't even bother to try and convince them to do something else. You go somewhere else. You do something else. If you don't like what your society is doing, you just find a new group of people to hang out with, and it's as simple as that. Big man societies are a little bit different. There's more of a sense of permanence and cohesion, and more of an idea that everybody needs to be on the same page and doing the same thing. So in a big man society, everybody will listen to a central charismatic leader, or shouldn't even really call him a leader. Should call him, let's say, a quasi-leader, or let's say he's a group advisor. He advises the group of people. Everybody takes him seriously. They value what he has to say. But he still can't tell anybody what to do, because in acephalous societies, telling someone what to do is seen as an attempt to usurp the free will of another, and it is therefore akin to murder or rape, because you're taking away somebody's free will. You're taking away their self-determination and forcing something they may not wish upon them. So in acephalous societies, you never ever presume that you have the right to tell others what to do, and so the big man in a big man society, he's usually very careful not to actually tell people, you do this or you do that. Instead, he says, I think you should do this, or it would be smart to do that. And people just tend to listen to him. Now, when we get into chieftainships, things are a little bit different. At this level of political integration, there are authorities who have the legal right to tell you what to do. They have the legal right to kill. They can execute people oftentimes. Not that necessarily every society chooses to deal with problems that way, but if anybody does or does not have that right, it's the chief or other leaders of the chieftainship who determine whether or not that's okay. So you have people who are definitely in charge in a chieftainship. Like I said, usually like chiefs or a combination of chiefs and elders. And those can be broken up into two categories. You have your plain regular chieftainships, which have no qualifiers. We just call them chieftainships. And then we also have what we call ranked chieftainships. In a ranked chieftainship, that's basically chieftainships within chieftainships. So at the head of a chieftainship, you'll generally have like a high chief, or for anybody who studied European history, and especially for English speakers, the old Anglo-Saxon kings oftentimes were what you might call like a high chief or a chieftain. Um, it's a fairly familiar setup for a form of government, although it's not what most normal modern day people throughout our highly urbanized modern day world tend to think of as governments. Um, if you've seen statistics lately, you'll notice that most of the world's population is now urban. And so the majority of people, when they think of a country or a government, they think of a state level society. And state level societies have actually been around for quite a while. Some of the earliest examples of them were city states. Like, for example, ancient Babylon. Um, and then, of course, in the modern day, we have nation states, like the United States of America, or one of the most famous early nation states would have been ancient Rome, or the Roman Empire. Um, Japan is a nation state. South Africa is a nation state. Finland is a nation state. Virtually all the governments that we are familiar with today are nation states, and pretty much every last inch of land area nowadays is claimed by some nation state or another, with the exception of Antarctica. So any entity that you will see on a political map that has borders around it and a name is going to be a nation state, basically. So, yeah, that is an introduction to the categories of political integration. And I've got really not much more to say about that. So, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and don't forget to check out my website at djohnscott.com, or check out my science website at genesispanthesis.org. And y'all have a good one. Peace out.